Okay, cool. That's awesome. No, there we are. I can barely hear you, Thras. Now that we're 25 minutes into the thing. Yep, sounds great. How's my font size? Better? So I can also make it bigger. Really? How's that?
No, but now it's showing up.
Yeah,
okay.
I just actually I had so that I didn't get the infinite screen bomb. I had it muted, or whatever the visual equivalent of muted is.
Okay, I'm gonna how should I do this? Should I watch the I'm gonna watch the YouTube stream.
Yeah.
I'm gonna mute myself here.
Yeah. I'm gonna stop sharing this. Whoa. That's oh it pinned it. Right. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and I will have Safari up here, and we can go to GitHub. All right. So, I mean, you don't want to mute yourself on Discord because I need to be able to hear you, right? If this is a pairing session.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, I just muted myself in the YouTube channel.
I see. I mean, I guess the other thing is that, oh, right. I probably should keep the screen share going. Is there a way, Jacob, to actually have the screen share so that in Discord so that it's like just not showing? Like I'm sharing my screen, but
I think you can right click.
To like just have it be black on my display?
Yeah, I think.
Show my screen share? There you go.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what I want. So you guys can actually see my screen. All right, so there's a couple things that I was thinking we could work on today. There's there's a lot of changes that we need to make, small changes to the API that will be effective for version 3. And we should probably document what those changes are going to be so that ideally we can put in a deprecation mechanism for V3. And then once that deprecations have been resolved on your code base, if you're using V3, then upgrade to V4 should be basically seamless. Does that make sense?
Does to me.
So what that would mean, so we could work on that. Or we can also just hack on the different pieces here. But I was thinking, that would be really helpful. So I actually started on categorizing certain things that are on 3.1, but I was thinking it would be nice to actually make a like a deprecation plan. And
Yeah,
I just
so we can take some things off that list
take some things off what list? This one?
asynchronously. Well, yeah, the deprecation list. We can power through some of those things. Is that something you think you can do now, or do we do want
Yeah.
to do the is that okay?
Do what? Oh, by the way, it just occurred to me.
Oh,
No
do-
one on the live stream can hear you guys.
Rob,
So
that's what I was gonna ask. No, actually, wait, hold on. Let me see.
I can just add a source, right?
Okay, hear me.
On the live stream? But then how is your sound coming through? Because I think I probably can have to add. Is there? Yeah, he was talking. So what we need is we need an audio input capture coming from Discord, and I have no idea how that is going to work. But we do. And yeah.
Click the window. You can, yep, you can turn enable preview, turn that off if you don't want the effect.
Oh, I see. So I see.
Yeah, and
Right.
now turn, yeah, because what you were also missing was you had the Apple Cinematic Display turned off.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I can see now when I'm talking, my
Right.
voice is coming through that.
Okay. How is that
So
possible?
you had, well, you, audio routing things.
Wait, your voice is
It-
coming through the audio. Okay. But you couldn't. But Taras couldn't hear you on the live stream.
Because you had it hidden before, because you demonstrated
Oh, okay. All right.
which also hides the appropriate audio sources or the related audio sources.
Oh yeah, I can hear Jacob now.
Okay. All right. Well, cool. There we go. That's okay. So we're good.
We're going live through the power of digital media.
Okay. All right. So yeah. So I was thinking we could. So if we create a basically a deprecation list, because certain. And we need to be able to change, although not very much. We should make a list. So the first one is call. This is very overused. And part of the problem is it's overloaded in two ways. One is it is used because it encapsulates scope. So it's very handy. So you use call in situations like this, like if I want to make a quick hack over here, I can say oops. Let me just turn on my language server. So if I want to say if I want to run, I can say like, for example, if I say call here, and I spawn something, I spawn X, I'm going to spawn Y. By the time I get back to here, X is dead. Y is dead. So that's what typically you use call for, is it's a way to encapsulate scope. And part of what we're doing here with this work is we're actually making a separate scoped operator that doesn't actually affect the call stack, because the problem is call here in V3 internals is it creates a new frame that's different from the calling frame. And so as a result, when you get an exception, you lose that stack trace, because the stack trace always starts at the beginning of the frame. Effection V4, this is what you would do. This is like the V4 code, or sorry, the V3 code. For V4, what you would do is you would you're going to say yield scoped like this, and scope, it has the same effect, is that when I get to here, X is dead and Y is dead. So what we're talking about doing, this is one way you use scoped. The other way, one way you use call. The other way you use call is to evaluate promises and async functions. So you can say like yield call async. And this is how you integrate with async functions. Await fetch, await this thing, await that thing, and so on and so forth. You can also say call, you can use this to evaluate a, some synchronous function. It's not really helpful in that way. But what I'm thinking that we want to do is we want to align call, because it's confusing for a lot of people coming. So we want to align it with like JavaScript call. So what we would then want to be able to do is say if we had, if we had async function like this, and we wanted to say this dot fetch, this dot thing, and then we had like arguments that we were passing through, we could then use it, call it just like, it would be almost like function.prototype.call, where we would say, pass it new thingy, and then, so this is how function prototype call is. It would just be a way of invoking things, but agnostic about whether it was a synchronous function, an async function, or a operation. Oh, so this is like, so then the other thing is, here we have a situation of like V3 promise, is we have this thing where you can say yield call, and then you can pass it a promise. Let's see, we could new promise. That's never going to resolve, but like this is particularly problematic because it's not a function, it's just an object. It's not a, and it messes with types. So we need to be able to have a deprecation plan to move from V3 to V4. And So that's one way. It seems like, the first thing that we want to be able to do is we need to deprecate, what am I talking about? Probably deprecate this usage, honestly. Like what is the value in that? I guess it's an operation, in the sense that if you have some abstract thing where you want to return, like if you have some abstract type where you've got some operation, and you needed to do that, well, you could assign that. You could say op equals that'd be one way to do it. And all you have is a synchronous function, but you want to consume the result as an operation. So that's one thought. So maybe we don't deprecate this usage, but it seems to me we certainly want to deprecate this. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so I would say, like, first thing for noting scope, and also for evaluating promises, we are going to deprecate. Now, part of the problem is that if we're changing the semantics of call so that it doesn't, so one of the things we're talking about is having call for functions not actually provide not actually have a scope associated with them. So then, if that's not the case, then it seems like this is like we want to actually deprecate passing an operation function to them, right? Because if I wanted to call, like in this case, I'm going to always want to replace this with scoped. Because if I wasn't using it to do encapsulation, I would just call the things. Right? Like
makes sense to me.
Let's say that I've got like foo. I've got this thing as foo. Right? So if I say call foo, that is actually going to create a scope around foo and evaluate it and do the thing. But if we change that, then, and it doesn't do anything, then I might as well have just said yield foo, right? And if I need to call it programmatically, I can say yield foo call, null with 0 arguments. So the question is, do we deprecate this form? It means that we have a little bit, we clearly want to deprecate this. But do we want to actually deprecate this form? Because there is a symmetry between, we have a function returning an operation, we have a function returning a promise, and we have a function returning a value. And we want to be able to represent each one of those as an operation. The thing is this is already an operation.
I think folks are going to see an asterisk and go, this is a special thing already. I don't need to do anything special with it.
Right. Now, there is one thing though, that if I have this as an operation, this is a different operation. I can basically, the difference between this and calling foo is that once I call foo is stateful. It's a generator function, or it's a generator, not a generator function. It's a generator. whereas this is stateless. It's a description of how to invoke the generator function. And so this, like I can do something like this where I say const, call foo equals call and this is an operation. The type of this thing is an operation.
Is it stateless until you put it into the yield?
Yes. And I can call it, so I can yield star to call foo any number of times I want to, and it'll invoke a new version of this operation every single time. So let's say that function foo returns a.
That seems powerful when you know, like I think it's not necessarily. I mean, I think it's cool in this particular format, but so in the way you wrote it here, it's with call, without call is basically the same. With if you remove the scope, like the frame around it, right?
Say what now?
So the call or without the function, like the function generator there, if you were to declare that function generator on line above, like on line 4, right? So like move it out, so be like make it like foo. Oh, you just move it out, and it's just gonna have its own. It's gonna be hoisted right to the top.
Right. Here, let me.
And then, so this, and then you pass foo there, and so now if you were to pass, and so you have call foo. So does call foo and foo behave the same if you pass them to yield on line 15, like in
the first time
in Effection 4?
Right. So you mean here in Effection 4?
Oh, okay. So the difference there is you have to have the invocation, the function invocation. Yeah.
Right. Well, so the thing is
that makes sense.
What's interesting here is that like these have the same type, right? They're operation string. The problem is this is stateful. This is a generator, and this is an operation that invokes the generator function, and then yields the generator, the content of the generator. You almost never want this. If you're pulling out an operation into a constant, this is actually bad. This is a foot gun, because the first time you do it, first time you evaluate it, it's going to work. Second time, it's going to be undefined. It's going to return undefined because you already ran past the end of the generator.
Yeah, I think that the second case, like the line 10, I think that's kind of a little bit nonsensical.
It is.
Really, right?
Right. Whereas right.
That is okay, but so this here is equivalent essentially to if you had like on line 21, if you had yield call foo.
This is
that would be essentially equivalent, right?
This would be the same.
Yeah, call foo.
These would be equivalent, right?
Yeah.
Each one would be a different thing.
And you can do it as many times as you want, and it will still be equivalent, right? Because they're essentially.
Whereas here, right, if I do this, then I can say foo, and then I can say yield call foo. Each time I get all three of those are the same. The difference is this is stateless right here. This is stateless. This one is stateful. But the thing is, if I create it, it's stateful, and I only use it once and I throw it away, which is like 99% of the usage. It's fine. And then here, right, we're constructing the thing. So I think probably we don't deprecate this.
No. Because you want that syntax for situations where you're passing a variable to call, but the variable can be anything callable. Right.
And you also want, if you want to basically, so it's basically any function. Okay, so the problem is then how do we communicate, because this is actually subtle, between V4 and V3, call is not going to establish a new scope. like you need to use this instead if you want to create a new scope. Call is just going to be for you have a variable. You're going to use it a lot less, I would imagine. You've got something.
Right now, call is always creating a new scope.
Right now, call is always creating a new scope, and it won't.
I feel like that's not going to be a deprecation thing. That's going to be a breaking change.
That's a breaking change. I mean, the goal, right, is that, right? So how do we communicate that? Because ideally what you would do is...
you're basically going to do like a search and replace for call and replace with scoped.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, I think what we need to do is just say call is being replaced with scope, and then provide a link that describes nuances of if you do not want.
Right. Okay.
The other benefits that you get.
Okay, so basically we want to say call is being note. So we deprecate the bare promise. And then we need to say add notes on what is changing about call and what is changing. Add notes on the what is changing about call and what is how.
What if we add scope to V3? If
We
we're going to have
can't.
both of these,
That's the
Yeah,
thing.
that's what I was thinking.
I would
Yeah.
love. We could. Oh yeah. Okay. We could.
I mean, in V3, we could effectively make it an alias, right?
Right. Yes. That's true. That's a good plan.
Because then
Good.
you could go through and take care of all those cases where you specifically wanted scoped,
Right.
and it'll just continue working as it was before.
Yes, that is
And
what
then
we
when
do.
they upgrade to V4, they will have already addressed any
Yes.
disparitions between their use of call and their use of what was call and is now scoped.
Yes. It would be just an alias. And honestly, 99% of the play times where we're using call, we're using it to scoped. It will be just an alias to call.
Well, there's folks using it for promises too, right?
Yes.
Is that going to be under
I-
scoped then too?
I would say that no. Nope.
Okay.
When you're using it to invoke async functions, it will be the same. It's only when you're using it to establish a boundary. So 99% of the time when you see this, it's to establish a boundary.
Can we make it an alias with the additional caveat of throwing a warning if they pass a async function?
Scoped will not accept an async function. So that's so scoped will basically, it will be a wrapper. It'll be a wrapper, but the argument, so like scope will be like and that is going to take a function that takes an operation. And that is going to yield an operation T. So
Is it going to be a function or a generator?
scoped? I
The
mean, scoped
art
is going to
is
be like
scoped.
this. It's going to be right call hop. That's going to be V3
Oh.
scoped. But
For
the
the
thing is
alias.
we're narrowing the types that it accepts.
Yep.
So it's not really an
Got it.
alias, it's a wrapper. So
Yep. Yeah, and then in that case, doc/TypeScript should help make sure that you're only using it in the places where it will eventually matter.
Right.
And not error.
Right,
Okay.
right. And so the other thing is 99% of the time you have call with a generator function, you're going to want to replace it.
Yeah.
So call and
So your replacement strategy could theoretically be find call
function
replace with
star.
scoped fixed TypeScript.
Right.
Yeah, I guess function.
Yeah.
Is it always going to be scoped function star?
I mean, no. because you could be doing something like this. You know, you can, because you can sometimes, you can do stuff like points free where you can say call, and then I've got, you know, like that, where this is a generator function, or this is a thing that returns an operation. So you don't, like, if you're doing kind of points free style, or not points, like you're doing kind of free composition and not actually explicitly yielding. You're not creating a wrapper thing that yields to the thing. You're just delegating. So yeah, anytime.
So you'd have to, like, you could generically search and replace for call, and then you'd have to come back and just fix the asyncs.
Right, that would be one way to do it. We could also do a code mod.
But at least the yeah, true. The use of promise within scoped though will throw a TypeScript error.
Yeah.
So if you, depending on your setup, you might be able to just search and replace and then come back and touch on errors.
So upgrade would involve replace call with scope, then fix TS errors, unless you have things that are tasks. Like if you're calling on a task, which is very rare, but tasks are the only thing that are also promises and operations. So, like run, if you, I don't know if you did, like if you were to do this, call run, I think that would actually be a TypeScript error. But if you were like, yeah, if you were like run function, this is going to return a task. It's going to return a task which is also a promise. That would be weird. So it's not a, there's not a 100% guarantee. But I think that that's one option. Okay. Let's call this API changes. So certain APIs are going to need to change, not very much. Hold on 1 second. Change a lot very much. Okay, so what else do we have that's going to be deprecated? That's the biggest one. I'm thinking of deprecating scope.run. And making a operation, which is, so basically deprecating scope.run and moving to run operation and then passing in scope as a parameter. I think that's going to be the V4 interface, and so then scope itself will just have nothing but operations on it, because right now it's too tempting. Like there will be a scope dot, like where every place where you were using scope.run, most of the time what you want is scope.spawn. Because a spawn is an operation and it's safe, whereas run is synchronous and it's not safe. So what I mean by that, let's look at so so if we have something like oh, right. Let me relocate here. And put this in the main Effection library. So if we say why is it not? Something's weird with my language server. Normally the way that like I would spawn a task is to say scope.run. And the reason this is a problem is if this fails for whatever reason, you should never, I should never, or it causes an exception, I should never get to this line. It's just not a good idea to be having synchronous functions that you're using inside operations unless you're really explicitly managing it. Like things that come in from the outside of Effection should be consumed via signals, or signals or futures or some other thing where you basically can put a continuate. You can say I'm going to continue at this point with the result of this value that's coming in from outside of Effection. That way, if an error happens or the task in which I'm running halts, I never return from that operation. But anytime you have synchronous code, you have to be sure that it's really safe, because if it isn't, you can end up executing lines that you shouldn't be getting to. So this is like this is going to be the V3 way, and then an error, and then this is the V4 way. As you can pass a scope argument to run, and that kind of marks that like this is because this is a top level entry point and it's something that you should be doing. It's a little bit more dangerous, but there's no scope.run. You pass scope there. Now what you should do, this is one way, but the really nice way is we're going to add a spawn operation to scope, and then that will, although then again, yeah, I think we're going to add a spawn operation to scope, and which is if you're inside an operation, that's what you should be doing, is using scope.spawn. Does that make sense?
I think so, yeah.
The other reason that we're doing this is because in V4, so we're getting rid of scope.run and having scope.spawn and scope.eval. And scope.eval is itself an operation where you basically you run this operation, but you run it fully inside this scope, but it'll be sequential in the sense that if I if I basically am here and I say yield then this is in scope, and if I spawn anything in there, it's going to get spawned into this scope if I'm going to do anything else. But until this is done, this will return once this is done. So it'll be sequential. And Effection V doesn't have a way to do that. But what that means is that you don't really need to, there's not really a need to ever, call scope.run. And I think we want to kind of guide people to be using the operation where they should be, and the only time they're ever like running anything explicitly is when they're really like outside of Effection and there's no other way. And so the scope from outside of Effection is pretty opaque. Meaning scope is just this thing and it's got a bunch of operations that you can do, and then you can pass it as an argument to an Effection, what is it, in essence an Effection entry point. But apart from that, you don't use scope outside of Effection. So let's see. Whereas now this is doing scope.run. So basically, then we need to say deprecate scope.run, or ideally scope.run with scope.spawn. What else? I think we're over the allotted time. I actually need to go take care of some stuff before we start working on whatever it is we're going to work on at 3:30. Yeah, what do y'all think?
I mean, everything sounds reasonable.
I think that might be all that there is. I'm going to go ahead and to deprecate in terms of deprecation. The only other thing that would be is that we actually there's these things that we probably should start adding to V3. So like there's going to be a with resolvers in 4. It's it's kind of critical to implement some of the other stuff. I know. There's one other deprecation we haven't talked about, but these are things that, just like scoped, we should add them now, because they're actually really handy. And I think that we're going to, because like with resolvers, for example, the reason I thought about it is we're going to deprecate action. Let's see. Let's go here. So we're going to deprecate action. Action is the same way. We use action. There's two real reasons we use action, or maybe we keep action, but yeah, I don't know. Here's the thing. Here's what we use action for. We'll save this as a teaser, because we use action because it captures it protects you from scope in the same way that call does, which I don't know if that's a good thing, since we don't need that, since it doesn't we'll have scoped, so we don't need that anymore. But you generally use action when you have some asynchronous callback. So you're like action with a function, and this takes a resolve and a reject. But this is actually very easy to implement once we have with resolvers, because the difference is like usually what I use action for is I'll capture you want to run some operation, or you have a loop or whatever, and then at some point you want to escape, and you can call resolve at that point, and you jump straight away to here. So it's kind of like shift is in delimited continuations. But once we have scoped, and so like by default action is scoped, like once we have scoped, we don't really need action at all, because we can actually define it ourselves. We can say function action, and then basically we can say let resolve reject operation equals with resolvers. And then we can we basically take this thing, which is our operation, and we can basically return actually would have anyway. I don't want to get too deep into it. There's probably some subtlety there, but the question is, do we even need this anymore? Because we're going to have a way, we're going to have like an explicit like pause, or we're going to have suspend. Here, we should wrap it up, and then we'll continue in like 20 minutes. So, anything else we should cover before we go?
I don't think so.
Are we going to end the stream and
Yeah.
just end the stream on YouTube?
Yeah, let's go ahead and end the stream. All right.
Right. Okay, cool.
All right, cool.
See you, folks.
See you later.
All right, bye.